Hello everyone, my name is Borax and I've been on a mission to play and rate every single champion in the support role. I made a poll a while back asking you guys which champion I should review next, and two champions came up with a perfect tie, Fiddlesticks and Aurelion Sol. With Aurelion Sol rework just coming out, I guess we'll give Fiddle the edge here and do the dragon another time. Let's quickly go over Fiddle's abilities, to see why he could work as a support. He has his passive which replaces his trinket wards with scarecrow effigies that stand still and look like Fiddlesticks while granting him vision. He can also stand still for 2 seconds to pretend to be an effigy. Post level 6, this effigy will act as both a normal ward and a red trinket, revealing all enemy wards. Fiddlesticks has his Q, which is a point to click fear that deals % current health magic damage. This ability has a passive, where if Fiddlesticks is not visible to the enemy team and has been out of combat for 2.5 seconds, his next damaging ability will fear all targets hit. Because targets cannot be feared multiple times within a time window, if you use his Q on a target Fiddlesticks has already feared, it will deal double damage. Then Fiddle has his W, which lets him drain all nearby enemies during a channel, healing him for a percentage of the damage dealt. The final tick of damage at the end deals bonus damage. Next he has his E, which lets Fiddlesticks slash at his target location, dealing magic damage and slowing all enemies hit. Enemies that are hit at the center of the slash will be silenced for 1.25 seconds. Finally, he has his ultimate, where he channels for 1.5 seconds, then blinks towards his target location, dealing massive AoE damage for 5 seconds. Fiddlesticks is a very unique character with many iconic abilities, but does he have enough utility to thrive in the bot lane? Well, let's find out together, as I rate Fiddlesticks, the Ancient Fear, on his ability to be played in the support role.
Don't be scared. Can't hurt you.
In the early game, I like to rate a support's ability to invade lane and roam. Fiddlesticks is the scariest looking champion in the entire game, so surely he should be great at instilling fear into the enemies with his invade. Well, actually yeah. Point and click CC is such a powerful tool in this game, and Fiddlesticks has one that's also ranged. If you run Glacial Augment, it becomes quite a potent combo, as the fear and slow is quite devastating to your opponents and should let your team follow up with their own abilities. For invading, I will give Fiddlesticks an S. One of my favorite things about it is how non-committal it can be, meaning that after you fear and see 100 enemy champions waiting for you, then you can decide to just disengage instead of going in. The two downsides are that his CC is only single target, and you can't check a bush, so if the opponents are camping one, it can be quite risky. Now let's talk about laning, where I like to judge a champion based on 3 categories: poking, peeling, and all-inning. There are multiple rune options that you can go for with Fiddlesticks that I will dive deeper into later, but if you want to emphasize poke to establish lane control, then Comet plus Scorch on top of your long range E isn't a bad amount of damage in the poke department. Oftentimes, however, I wind up taking Glacial Augment as it greatly enhances your CC potential and overall playstyle of trying to stick to people, as he isn't the best poker with only one long distance range tool. I will say though, he can do an insane amount of damage with a short trade pattern, which involves being in an unwarded bush, starting off with your E, which will fear them, then walking up to quickly Q them, which won't CC them again, but will deal bonus damage, and then sucking them with your W. This will put your opponents in an awkward position, where they will be chunked and either have to try to turn on you, which is a losing position, as you are dealing damage and healing, or they will have to try to run away, giving you a free chunk on the enemy. For poking, I will give Fiddle an A rating. Right now, dealing damage in the bot lane is a premium, so he won't poke as hard as a lot of the ADCs or long-range mages, but he will have better poke than a lot of enchanters and traditional supports out there. If you are a KDA player and hate being in a graze screen, then Fiddlesticks Support is not the pick for you, because in almost every game I played, I ended up almost topping double-digit deaths each time. You see, the way Fiddle peels is by fearing one target, and then trying to dish out as much damage as possible with his W drain, which will also make him kind of tanky because of the lifesteal you gain. But because people know they can stop the healing by CCing the Fiddle, they will then focus you with their abilities, which hopefully will buy enough time for your ADC to dish out damage or get away. For peeling, I will give Fiddle an A+. He's actually quite solid into most engaged champions, as he can either fear them to disrupt their combo, then try and survive with his drain, or he can look to fear the enemy ADC, which will lessen the damage you take. He struggles quite heavily at peeling against coordinated ganks though, as he only has that one CC ability, and against poke matchups, Fiddlesticks is not great as he is a mid-range character and can't do much against long-range foes. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, Fiddlesticks has that silence on his E, why is he not mentioning that? Well, truthfully, that silence is kind of a joke, as the ability is not the easiest skill shot to land where you need to hit them in the middle of it, And it's a slow wind-up ability, so unless the enemy has the mechanics of a grandpa, they should be able to get their spells off. It can be used to stop channeled abilities quite effectively, but not only are they far and few between, a lot of the channeled ults are very long range that it can be quite tricky to reach them with your E. Now let's talk about my favorite category by far, all-inning. Fiddlesticks is one of those champions that somehow does a billion damage even if he has no items or is down a couple of levels. He also isn't a tank and relies purely on his W helping him survive, so if you can play around the enemy's CC tools to maximize this ability, it will help you out a ton. But you will also almost always get ignited, which does suck. Pre-level 6, his engaging is pretty awkward if you are not in the bush, as you will miss out on that bonus damage from his Q, and you can also CC multiple people this way if you hit an E while out of vision, as will fear everyone hit. Sadly, it can be quite difficult to get pushed in the bot lane as Fiddle support, as so many of the champions that are played right now heavily emphasize establishing push. If you can get your jungler to go down to the bot lane, then you should be able to easily secure a kill, as your point and click fear is so powerful, and you can even look to flash Q someone to get that play started. For all inning, I will give Fiddlesticks an A-. It's definitely decent, but it can be quite conditional with you needing a bush or for an enemy to be close enough for you to fear them, which can be tricky. Now once you reach level 6, everything changes as you can get access to another flash that you can channel, which also does a million damage each second and has the potential to CC everyone if you do it from out of vision. There's not really much an ADC can do to survive if you get this combo off, which feels amazing. But it can be quite difficult to reach that level 6 point as Fiddlesticks support, so it's not something you can always rely on to win lane. But once you've hit it, oh boy, it's time to have some fun. Now that we've talked about Fiddlesticks' laning prowess, let's rate the matchups that he might have to face. Laning phase is a bit of a struggle for Fiddlesticks, as a lot of his power comes from his ultimate, so oftentimes you're looking to try and survive more than anything else, which is easier said than done, especially against those long-range mages who deal a million damage while never being and always having their CDs up. They also all have solid CC abilities to stop you from running up on them, and probably won't be in range for you to ulti them. It's honestly just a miserable time and might be worthy of a dodge. Other matchups that will be quite the struggle are more AP threats who have medium range like you do, so you might be able to trade back against them with your E to neutralize their poke. A downside against all these champions is they often build a bit of health, so it can be a struggle to one-shot them before they can get their spells off to deal massive damage to you. Then, all of the tanky hook champions can suck as they have multiple ways to cancel your W, and if they ever hit your ADC, your fear might not be enough to save them. The other engaged champions are a lot more susceptible to your fear, as they usually will end up in range of it for you to stop their play, and you can pretty comfortably poke them with your E and might even be able to establish lane prio. If they do play well though, they could snowball the lane, which can be scary. Zillion and Renata are annoying, as a lot of your plays involve you going in on one person to try and blow them up, but they can use their life-saving abilities to neutralize that. Now the Hail of Blade ADCs will be very annoying to deal with early on, but if you don't get too far behind, then your ultimate is almost always a guaranteed one-shot on them later on. Ashe is extra annoying though, as her hawkshot being able to spot you out to neutralize your ability to land a multi-man fear sucks. All of the traditional enchanters are also decent matchups, as you can both scale through the lane and try to blow them up once you have your ultimate, as the enchanters are usually designed to protect their ADC by being near them. But this proximity is where Fiddle ult excels, as you can hit both of them with the ability to deal massive damage. Truthfully, there are no matchups that Fiddlesticks support can dominate, but the ones I think can be the most AFK are Braum and Taric, as your drain is effective in keeping you alive, and they don't pose too much threat to your ADC as they're looking mostly to peel, giving you the potential to scale for free. At the same time though, they do quite well into you in the late game, so be wary of that. Finally, we have a bunch of champions in the who plays these guys even, as I'm waiting to see people pick these characters in my games. When it comes to what ADCs you want to play with, there aren't any crazy good synergies that I can think of, except maybe for Ashe. In theory, if your Ashe could hit a long distance arrow to let the Fiddlesticks channel his ultimate to finish off the stun target, that would be awesome, but also not the most realistic. The ADCs that probably will be the best are the ones that can 2v1 the lane, letting Fiddlesticks scale or roam as he pleases. Ezreal with TP is a prime example of this playstyle, but it requires your ADC understanding what is happening, which is not the strong suit of most League players. Caitlyn is another example of a strong ADC, but she usually enjoys having a lane advantage with the help of her support rather than just being net neutral. The final ADC that I can think of that could actually be decent is Jhin, if you wanted to try and play an aggressive kill lane, as you both have so much single target damage. You might just be able to blow someone up before they can respond, and his W should be easy to land after your fear. But in the hypothetical case that your ADC is a useless bonobo, then you might want to consider roaming, so let's talk about that now. Fiddlesticks is traditionally a jungler, which means he should be good at roaming, right? Right, he is solid. That point-and-click fear from a distance to set up other people's CC is very potent, so you do want to be picking this champion with a mid laner who can follow up on a play. You could even look to take Predator if you want to maximize your roaming potential, as you do need to get close to people in order to get that fear off. But if you wait until level 6 to start roaming, then your gank potential skyrockets, as the ability to fly over walls to deal massive damage while fearing people is legendary. For roaming, I will give Fiddlesticks an A rating. If he ever gets caught out while roaming, you will most likely perish, as your fear isn't enough CC to get away, as you are missing the mobility to escape. Another thing I need to mention that is unique to Fiddlesticks is his trinket, which is really powerful. Not only does it grant you vision, but post level 6 it even starts working as a red trinket, meaning you can clear wards in an area to set up your fear with ultimate, and you can have a lot more wards available in general. Let's give Fiddlesticks a rating for his ability to support in the early game, which will slot at a B+. He's okay at doing almost everything you want from a support, while not really excelling at any one thing in general. That is until you reach level 6, where a lot of his power lies. Which makes me wonder, how might Fiddlesticks fare when it comes to the
See, it's just a scarecrow.
In the late game, responsibilities of a support electorate include their ability to get picks into teamfight. Usually when a support is getting a pick, they need the help of their team to do so, but if you were able to find a bit of a lead or an unsuspecting low health target, then your ultimate proccing a fear into bonus Q damage, E, and drain should be more than enough burst to pop everyone but the tankiest targets. Another element of getting picks is seeing someone who is out of position and punishing them. This is where your point and click CC is so valuable, as you can flash forward to land a fear that at max rank lasts 2.25 seconds, which should be more than enough time for your team to finish them off. For getting picks, I will give Fiddlesticks an A+. If he had more mobility outside of his ultimate, which does have the limiting factor of a channel time, he would be a lot better here, but because he is able to get over thick walls with this ability and do a million damage, he is still very solid for getting picks. Now let's talk about team fighting, where his support's responsibilities include engaging, peeling, and sometimes dealing damage. The most important thing to take into consideration for engaging as Fiddlesticks is enemy vision. If you try to channel your ulti from an area where the enemies can see you, not only will you miss out on the multi-person fear, but they might be able to CC you out of the channel or just walk away from the area you are going. But if you can find that flank position, which is a lot easier in non-professional games, then few abilities are as devastating as Fiddle ult around an objective, because the CC and damage he outputs is crazy. The best time to engage is usually right as the enemies are trying to engage your team, as that's when the fight will be the most chaotic, and you can separate the carries from the enemy frontline. If you take too long to ulti though, your team could wind up dead, and you might be next as they could just turn and one-shot you. For engaging, I will give Fiddlesticks an S-. His ulti is amazing, but does need to be channeled and used from out of vision instead of instantly being able to go. You could also wind up just getting CC during your ulti and one-shot if you're a bit behind, which isn't amazing. And while Zhonya's is a great way to circumvent this outcome, the item has increased in price, making it harder to obtain for a support. There are only a few fears in the game, and that's probably for the best, as this form of CC is very powerful. It's pretty much a longer lasting stun that forces enemies to slowly walk away from you, letting you either escape or to finish them off. Against assassins and bruisers, Fiddle Fear has to be one of the best abilities in the entire game, as it's the only point and click hard CC ability that I can think of that can be used from range without needing some other condition, which is amazing and makes me confident in giving him another S- here. Like most champions who aren't an enchanter, he can't peel against poke, which does suck, but being able to counteract one person so heavily, no matter how fed they are, is superb. Now normally I would talk about Fiddlesticks and his ability to deal damage from the support role, but I think I'll just show you instead. As you can see, I was one-shotting a lot of carries and frequently with KDAs that were frankly atrocious and while down a bunch of levels. It doesn't matter though, because the damage you can dish out is outstanding and earns him an S rating here. It's not an S plus though, because he can't do damage as freely as some other supports who build Liandry's or Ludens, as Fiddlesticks does have to go in to deal his damage. Before we rate Fiddlesticks' overall ability to support, let's take a look at the runes and items that I would recommend. Like Cinch support, there's so many rune options you could explore with Fiddlesticks. The first option, which I mentioned previously, is Comet if you want to try and poke the enemies in lane. The damage is decent, but it's not crazy good either. You do gain access to some nice runes like Mana Flow Band and Scorch, which will help you sustain and fight in lane. I also think Absolute Focus is a decent rune choice, as a lot of your power comes from you ulting in at full health, where that extra bit of AP can help out. I believe that Glacial Augment is the actual best keystone for Fiddlesticks, as you can guarantee to proc it with his fear, giving you a lot more CC potential for either all-inning or peeling. You will notice a bit of a damage decrease though, so be wary of that when scrapping in lane. At the same time though, it's not too dramatic, as you can still take Scorch for instance to poke people with E. You also get access to Perfect Timing for Zhonya's Rush, and if you think about it, it's a 750 gold rune. Then I like to take Futures Market to get faster access to better items, and finally Cosmic Insight as you do utilize a lot of actives. The final rune choice that I would recommend is Predator if you want to go for a roaming playstyle, as the active lets you run up to people to point and click fear them. You can then take Cheap Shot for a tad more damage, Zombie Ward for more vision, and Ultimate Hunter is a personal favorite as I think his ulti is so impactful, but all choices have their own merit, so it's up to you. You could possibly go for other runes like Aftershock, Guardian, Airy, Electrocute, or First Strike, but I think they all have their own drawbacks, but feel free to experiment and let me know how it goes in the comments below. Now let's talk about items. For your gold income item, Spell Thief's Edge is your best option, as you can proc it with your E fairly safely, and you can stack it way faster than Relic Shield. When it comes to boots, I think Ionian boots with Lucidity are great, as they're very affordable and give you CDR to fear more people. If you have a lead though and want to deal more damage, then Stork Shoes are your best bet to get that magic pen. Like runes, there's so many items and build paths you can explore as Fiddlesticks, which again all have merit. Let's start by talking about the item Mickey X rushes when he plays Fiddlesticks support, which is Anathema's Chains. While it might seem a bit troll, I actually think it's a solid item for Fiddle, as you can really ruin the day of an enemy ADC by making yourself take less damage from them and making sure your CC lasts as long as possible. The item is also quite affordable and has a great build path of a lot of health and some CDR to help you survive early. Then in terms of Mythic, Protobelt is the best option, either as your rush or even after Anathemas, as a little dash you can get can help you chase people during your ultimate, or to give Fiddle a dash to escape from enemy abilities. Other mythics that I tried and did find some success with include Evan Shroud if you really want to embrace the Tanglesticks playstyle of just CCing and annoying people. You also will be able to proc the bonus damage fairly easily with the fear from your abilities, so it's quite solid. Now let's say you're actually obsessed with Tanglesticks and aren't satisfied with Evan Shroud. Then you could try out Radiant Virtue to make yourself an ultimate threat when you are in Crowstorm, but the very best way to avoid dying during your ulti is probably if you just build damage and kill them instead. Other items I went for depended on the state of the game. If I think I can get a lead, then Darkseal is a sneaky good item as it's quite cheap, and if you can build up stacks, it's amazing. The downside is that it will delay the purchase of your mythic if you can't get a lead. If you get a bunch of stacks, I would even upgrade the Darkseal into a Medjai's, as that's a way for you to completely take over a game if you can get 25 stacks, as it will truly let you one-shot any squishy with your ult. Other AP items that aren't bad for Fiddle include an Oblivion Orb if the enemy has a ton of healing, as they buff the healing cut, so you don't even need to upgrade it into Morello's unless you have extra gold. Zhonya's is an amazing Fiddlesticks support item, albeit quite expensive, but if you can manage to afford it, being able to ult into a teamfight and make yourself invincible so that you can't get popped while the rest of your team helps out is quite handy, especially if you have that Medjai's and want to protect your stacks. The final item I'll mention is Redemption if you just love being supportive, as the active is great for your teammates and it can help out Fiddle survive as the item enhances his drain healing. Now that we've talked about the runes and items, let's give Fiddlesticks an overall rating for his ability to support, which will slot at an S. This might come as a surprise as Fiddlesticks struggles in lane, but that's only because so many of the best supports right now are all about dominating the laning phase, so if you can survive through that, your ultimate is such a powerful tool that you can still have a massive impact. In fact, I would oftentimes end laning phase with 5 or more deaths already, which is terrible, yet I would be able to bounce back because no matter how fed someone is, Fiddlesticks Fear will make them slowly walk away as your team blows them up for a massive shutdown, getting your team a fighting chance. Would I recommend you play Fiddlesticks support? Absolutely. If you like Fiddlesticks a lot, then support is a great lane to explore, as you can actually interact with people as you try to E them for poke and fear them to peel. You also don't have to be terrified of getting counter jungle 24/7 by some sweaty player who wants to punish your pre-level 6 weakness. I have even played him a few games in solo queue, as I am that confident he can have a positive impact and even has a bit of carry potential, which can be useful when trying to win a game with the maniacs who are on your team. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and leave it a like, that would be amazing, and if you would consider subscribing, that would make my day. We also have a Discord, link in the description, so feel free to check that one out if you want to chat. Again, thanks for watching, and I want to wish you good luck and have fun if you're playing Fiddlesticks Support yourself. You might need it.